My father's vision for the museum was initially to bring something back to Jefferson Street. He knew the whole history of the demolishing of our community since the interstate came in, and it literally destroyed families, it destroyed businesses. His whole thoughts were bringing back the liveliness that African Americans once walked the streets and did every day there.
In June of 2009, I bought a business in Nashville. Probably about a week after I came to town, I met Butch Spiriton at the CMA Fest. And Butch said, "Hey, we're going to build this museum. You should get involved with the board." And I said, "Sure."
There were a lot of history museums around the country, and most of them struggle. So it was like, what can we do that's different? What do we do that stands out? What do we do that helps Nashville while Nashville helps it?
I was asked by Dr. T.B. Boyd and Francis Guest to become a part of this venture. They came to my office one day and told me about the project, and music is very important to me, and I thought this was a worthy cause, and I wanted to become a part of it.
I officially got on the board around 2003 or 4 when I was Commissioner of Financial Institutions.
While the project was starting to move and starting to take shape and the interest was starting, there was really no central headquarters. If somebody had a question about the museum, who would they call? And so they asked me if I would be interested in taking that role at that time, and definitely I was.
Francis Guest was involved, and we were seeking property from the state, and given I was part of the governor's administration, Francis came to me and said, "You need to go to Governor Bredesen and get this done."
One of the things that we initially did was to make sure that this was a viable project, that it was sustainable, that it was feasible, and ultimately that it was fundable. And once those things were put in place, and that's why a lot of things were tweaked, a lot of things were reorganized, once those 4 pillars were set, we knew this could happen.
The land had not been totally given over on Jefferson Street where people initially wanted it to be, and how we would actually pay for it was unclear. But there was an impressive group of people, T.B. Boyd comes to mind, Francis Guest, others, who were leading the charge for us to continue to remain committed to getting a museum built. Then we needed to see progress on fundraising. And that was a long haul.
Right at the heart of raising money, we had the 2008 downturn, economic downturn. I recall at that time Dr. David Williams was leading the Campbell campaign, and we had a meeting. He said, "We're going through a time when rich people don't even feel rich anymore." But he says, "We're going to keep moving, and we're going to raise this money."
While it struggled to find its footing, we loaned staff, we loaned expertise. We did any number of things along the way that said this is a community project.
We would sit around and talk about ideas of fundraising, how we would raise money and get the word out that this is what we want to do.
We wrestled with what do we put together to make this an international destination.
My father was a huge supporter of the 5th Jubilee Singers, and knowing their history and knowing that they're really the reason why Music City is called Music City. And I feel that that history and that knowledge, he definitely wanted to share that.
Ms. Pruitt and I work from the inside to gather support from the governor and other legislators. It was civil rights, arts, music, and culture, but it still tells our history through our music.
The economic and social conditions are reflected within the arts. And of course, the museum tells a story, so you can look at any genre, and if you look closely enough, you can tell what was happening in America during those periods.
Luckily, Pat Emery, who was sort of leading the charge on getting the building built here, the partners he brought in were willing to work with us, and the people at the museum, and of course Henry was real involved in this, were willing to shift from Jefferson Street to here, and it worked.
The fact that it's on Representative John Lewis Way is quite exciting, thinking about the fact that his legacy here, starting with the Freedom Riders and Civil Rights, and now we here are celebrating all music because African American music helped create the American music. But it's also exciting because the Minority Caucus and working with the mayor at that time, Carl Dean, and making sure that this development that came here in Nashville downtown also includes something towards the African American experience. We need to celebrate that.
Dr. Boyd and Francis Guest had a vision to make sure that the African American story is told. They both are leaders in this community in advancing the Black narrative in their own way. So this museum's opportunity for them was to leave a legacy. The lives of so many untold treasures. And they were both adamant that this museum would be Black-centric, welcoming to everybody, of course, but Black-centric, and that the project would have Black leadership and vendors and partners in the process of this.
I would love for it to become a Smithsonian-based museum. I think it has that potential, and it should be looked at as such, as one of the nation's museums.
I've raised a lot of money in my career for-profit ventures and really have tried to apply that discipline to the not-for-profit sector and to this project specifically. But you almost can't. They're really very different. In the for-profit sector, the motive is singular. It's to make money. In the not-for-profit sector, the motive can be very different.
Several large corporations stepped up. So at that point, along with the gathering of the curatorial team, the other designers just made me know that it was going to happen.
Under the leadership of Henry Hicks, Kevin Lavender, and the board, John Fleming and other professionals have designed and built a magnificent National Museum of African American Music. As a community, we celebrate this achievement and hope to share with its visitors the story of the influence African Americans have had on music through the world.
We often refer back to Ben as well, and I knew, I mentioned that time where I didn't tell anybody, but Ben sent, I think it was a $500,000 check to the museum about 3 days after I'd been employed. And it was, so for me, it was, okay, now you better bring your ass to work.
Yeah, get it done.
Yeah, and so it was, okay, wow, if you're that committed, I'm that committed.
Yeah.
If we're going to own our music brand and we're going to own Music City, then this museum being right across from the Ryman, Bridgestone Arena, and the Honky Tonks, and just a stone's throw from the Symphony Hall and the Country Music Hall of Fame, says this is somewhere special, and not just special for country music, but it is special because we love music and we love our creators.
The work, the people, the employees, is something we have to support. It has to be an ongoing support system from everybody. And that's why we felt the need to make a contribution to the museum, because we want to see it continue.
Just understanding that it's bringing people together is truly music. I mean, it's magical.
I think the lesson about this building and about this museum is tenacity. And T.B. Boyd was talking about this museum before I was mayor, and kept talking about it and kept trying to get people together to fundraise, to push it forward, to get the city more involved, and he stayed with it.
Well, I feel the legacy of this museum is that it will continue to be a teaching tool for those who are unaware of the contributions that African Americans have made to music.
As my father was getting ready to pass, his whole thing was passing the torch. And I think that Henry was a great person to pass the torch to for this museum, to get it over the final leg, the final stretch, and run this through the finish line. I want to say thank you, Henry.
I will always support this museum and bring whatever resources that I have, and it will be just a joy to contribute in any way I can.
You cannot have American music without the African American experience. And so I hope that we will continue to celebrate, that this museum will continue to grow, this museum will continue to expand, and that my great-grandkids will come, and I hope that they'll say Granddaddy Jerry Maynard II was part of building this and making sure that this came to pass.
The museum is not the building. The museum is not the permanent exhibition. The museum is the work that we do in the community and our educational programming. So we need to find ways for that not just to be in Middle Tennessee, but to be across the nation. We should be the leaders in Black music education.
The end product speaks for itself. The journey, the starts, the stops, the twists, the moves.
Oh, it was worth it.